from UCD and also from Anne-Marie Curtin in UCC. Simon Gray has been a student advisor in UCD and has been in student-facing education since 2005. He's co-chair of SAI's special interest group in EDI, and he's also works to deliver on-the-ground support and solutions for neurodivergent students in UCD. At this the SAI conference on Collaborate shortly in MTU, he will be facilitating an invitation to think, Immanuel Kant's philosophy of Debbie and student support. Anne-Marie Curtin is the Equality, Diversity and Inclusion Officer in UCC since 2018, and along with Simon, she's the co-chair of the SAI EDI SIG, and since its inception in 2023. Her areas of responsibility include gender identity, University of Sanctuary, and the development of staff networks. So I'm delighted now to hand you over to Simon and Anne-Marie, who will present today for you. Okay, thank you. Now you'll also see in the chat that Shane has added that the session will be recorded and we'll be monitoring the questions throughout the sessions. Thank you and welcome Simon and Anne-Marie.
Thank you so much, Martha. Martha has not mentioned that she's also a driving force of the special interest group that Anne-Marie and I are also co-chairs of. We could call Martha an honorary co-chair, but she probably wouldn't take it. Anyway, we really appreciate Martha introducing us. And I think I speak for Anne-Marie when I say that we're both thrilled and absolutely terrified to see so many people here. So thank you so much for taking the time to come along. I'm going to give you a quick overview of what we're going to be doing today. Our session today is going to be as discussion heavy as we can make it. We do want to give you a little bit of an overview first of the roots of EDI. I'm going to take it from a philosophical point of view because that's my stock in trade when I'm not doing a student advisor. And Anne-Marie's going to tell you about the statutory background, especially in Ireland, but also kind of from a global level coming down to Ireland of EDI in higher education institutes. We also we're very happy to see that this overlaps with at least one of our attendees' requests here, that we talk about government policy on EDI in HEIs. You might remember when you signed up when you registered for this, there was an opportunity to leave a comment or leave a question. We've had some of them, and we were thrilled to see that a lot of your questions overlap with what we're actually going to be talking about. So after we give the roots, we're going to then go on to kind of what's happening on the ground, the kind of the practical implementation of this. We're going to take a big break for the discussion then after that. The discussion is going to be focused on, we're starting off from a question, which is, could EDI be as seriously threatened in Irish higher education institutions as it is in HEIs in the USA? Now, there's a lot to unpack there. We're going to kind of just do a straw poll and then we're going to chat about it. We also note that some of the comments that we've had have already kind of asked about this. So people are thinking in the same way that we are. I won't name any names. One person said when they registered, how can we inoculate against the threat to EDI gains in Irish HEIs? Thank you for that question. That's exactly what we're going to try and talk about. Another person said it seems America will now move backwards on some EDI topics. I completely agree, and that assumption is the assumption that's underlying this question here. And lastly, we had another person saying, how do we protect EDI in Ireland so we never see a repeat of what has happened under the current administration in the USA, which is bang on exactly where we're going with our discussion. So we're looking forward to hearing everyone's thoughts on that, either in the straw poll we do, or we're going to do a Mentimeter kind of, you can input text there, or you can input text here on the chat where Martha and Shane will be keeping an eye. We're going to just round it off then and tell you about what we've been doing in the special interest group. Basically, we've been talking about training, EDI training and opportunities, what's actually happening. We've lots of kind of interesting figures to give you, might give you some ideas of what you might like to do next if you're interested with your own HEI in your own institution, with your own EDI in your own institution. So without any further ado, let me jump into my part of the presentation, which is about the philosophical roots of EDI. I'm going to go with another assumption here, which is one I've had for a couple of months now, but it's been going for a few years. EDI, therefore, B. We talk a lot about EDI in our institutions. The letter B is becoming an added part of that. especially across the water in the States, but it's becoming more popular over here. And B stands for belonging. Now, my assumption is that belonging is something a student feels if the HEI practices equality, diversity, inclusion. Let me dig into that a little bit. You can tell me what you think about this afterwards. I'm happy to be corrected on this. Belonging, to quote one of the authors that I've read, which you'll see at the end, is an individual's sense of identification or positioning in relation to a group or to the college community, and that this may yield an affective response. Now, those affective responses that come from a feeling of belonging to the university community, the HEI community, they include academic success, persistence in the degree, a lower withdrawal rate, and a kind of a cleaner degree progression. People feel more comfortable with their studies. They're able to go on. They're not distracted by these feelings of exclusion or feelings like they don't belong. There's also, in a more human way, there's more meaningful relationships between students, between staff members, between students and staff members. So all in all, it has good effects. These effects come from a feeling of belonging, and a feeling of belonging can only come about, if it does come about, I'm going to argue, if the HEI practices equality, diversity, and inclusion. Or to put it in more specific terms, if the HEI to which the student belongs has a comprehensive and holistic approach to EDI. The comprehensive includes meaningful inclusive messaging. This would include, I'm jumping to the end here, but with UDL, Universal Design for Learning, there are multiple methods of engagement, so that everybody feels like they are getting the message. The message is going to everyone, and anyone who wants to engage with their course, with support resources, with administrative tasks, they have multiple methods of doing that. It's holistic because everyone in the university is doing it. EDI only really works, and the belonging only really works, I'm going to argue, if everyone is culturally competent, if everyone is trained, if everyone is on board. So that, I think, is where the rubber meets the road. And I'm going to dig in a little more to the philosophy and ask the question, well, why should everyone be on board? Why should everyone basically practice EDI? I'm going to argue that EDI basically means just be sound, if you'll excuse my Irish lingo here. But just be sound is basic. That's my third assumption of this presentation, that's basically they're the same thing. I'm happy to be corrected on that. And I know it's more complex than just be sound, but I don't think that's untrue. Why should we just be sound? Well, there's a simple answer and there's a more comprehensive answer. The simple answer is the kind of answer any of us were taught if we had any kind of contact with religion or a religious upbringing when we were young. It's rooted in every spiritual belief. Christianity says, do unto others as you would have them do unto you. That's the golden rule. Judaism, that which is despicable to you, do not do to your fellow. Islam, the Prophet Muhammad says that no one truly believes until he loves for his brother that which he loves for himself. Buddhism says, first do no harm, the list goes on. So basically, we've been told since we were kids, just be sound. The more comprehensive answer involves the philosophical models, which I have here. Now, I could be here all day talking about philosophy, but I won't. There's virtue ethics, is the first philosophical model, which in a nutshell is just be sound. So it focuses on your individual moral character. We're bringing this back to the individual human level. Okay, this is where ethics works, and then we can build it back up to a more institutional level. But the first is virtue ethics, just being a sound person. Consequentialism is the next kind of philosophical method, which basically says be sound so that something can happen. This ties in with the belonging, that kind of the causative chain that we saw earlier with the belonging. If you are sound, then people will feel like they belong. If students feel like they belong, then it will have positive ramifications for their progression. So if you want a student to do well, be sound. That's what we're arguing here. We can argue against it if you want. Then you got the last one. The last model here is deontological ethics. This is the one I want to dig into a little bit. This is basically, it says do the sound thing. So it focuses on the thing itself. It argues that there is a right thing to do, an inarguable right thing to do. And that right thing is the thing to which we should all aspire. as human beings, as members of the HEI community, as anyone who's interested in EDI. The most comprehensive answer of why be sound comes from Immanuel Kant, who, as kind of Martha foreshadowed earlier, I'm going to be talking a lot more about Immanuel Kant and inviting others to come and chat with me about it at the Collaborate conference next month. But for now, just tell you, Immanuel Kant is the cornerstone of modern philosophy. He's also incredibly dry and difficult to read. But that aside, his main contribution to ethics is the categorical imperative, which, to give you an example of how dry he is, the categorical imperative says, quote, act only in accordance with the maxim through which you can at the same time will that it become a universal law. It's a fancy version of the golden rule from Christianity. It says basically, if you're doing something and you're not sure if this is the right thing to do, then ask yourself, if everyone did this, how would I feel about that? Would I be okay with this action if everyone did it? So, for example, is spending my time training in EDI the right thing to do? Is that a good thing to do? Yes, because if everybody did it, it would have those effective kind of consequences that we talked about earlier. So EDI training, I'm going to argue, is a good thing. Cultural competency, inclusive messaging, we should spend the time doing these, because if everybody did it, the world would be a much easier place for everyone to live, regardless of ethics. Or if we take the opposite, should I not do these things? If I don't spend time training, if no one spent time training in EDI, what kind of world is that kind of world that we would want? Would I be okay with that? So Kant says that we should treat everyone in the same way that we would like to be treated, because everyone is inherently free. Every individual is free. Every individual is rational. That's what defines us as coherent as human beings. And because of that, we need to have this respect for each other, because just as I reason, just as I feel freedom, so too do you, and so too does everyone else. And if we're all on the same page about that, if we're all practicing these kind of ethics, and we're all using the categorical imperative together in our community, we'll reach what he calls a kingdom of ends. And a kingdom of ends is basically a place where everyone has free will, but everyone volunteers of their own free will to respect everyone else and to work for the happiness of all. And that is the number one thing that we're all working towards. This parallels with the kind of community which EDI initiatives explicitly strive towards. I'm done with that, but I have got one outstanding question you can see at the bottom I'd like to ask you about later. I hope I've persuaded you that EDI has very persuasive intellectual roots in philosophy, but I'm still faced with a question that I genuinely don't know. Why isn't it comprehensive and holistic as other things which have deep philosophical and intellectual roots? Why is it vulnerable to attack? With that, I'm going to leave you with that thought. I'm going to hand over to Anne-Marie. Thanks so much for listening to me. Anne-Marie is going to tell us about the statutory and legal framework for EDI in higher education institutions.
Thank you, Simon. Hi, good morning, good afternoon. My name is Anne-Marie. Thank you for that philosophical background, Simon. It was very interesting. So, as he was saying, I'm going to be giving you a kind of context, legal, the legal background to it. So in order to talk about equality in any shape or form, we have to first have the concept that we are individuals with our own aspirations and a right to explore them. And that's not a very new, that's not a very old idea. It's quite a new one, globally speaking, and in the history of humans. Some early examples would be, for example, the Magna Carta, back when the English nobles decided to hold the king to account and curb his powers. They were making a stand saying, we have a position here and we have a voice and we're going to be heard. Another outstanding example would be the French Revolution. So this was these little pockets of groups of people standing up and saying, hang on a second, were becoming more and more common. So the French Revolution was as well known as the local, the French peasants saying, our reason for existence is not solely to make your lives more pleasant. We have dreams, we have aspirations, and they're important. And that was set out in the Declaration of the Rights of Man, which was followed briskly by the Declaration of the Rights of Women by Olympe de Gouges, and that was followed briskly by her execution by guillotine for being an uppity female. So we move from the French Revolution, the American Revolution, we have the abolition of slavery, we have the first wave feminism, all these different iterations of people saying, hang on, these individuals have rights and these individuals have rights. Well, I shouldn't say rights because we didn't have rights in the sense that we know them now. But so we move into, so we've got a situation where we have a growing number of people, and I'm talking this neck of the woods here, so I'm really talking Europe, America, the Western world. In order to access these rights, sorry, I'm getting myself confused here. Sorry. So move into the 20th century. We have the Irish Free State Constitution. So the Irish Free State Constitution was recognizing that we have different people, different experiences of the world based on different characteristics. So up until this point, you have people who are experiencing the world differently, dependent on their gender, on their sex, on where they were born, when they were born, what their situation in life was. And this is generally seen as, well, that's just the way it is. But if the 1922 Free State Constitution was looking at was a document that expressed how people were beginning to see these differential treatments based on these characteristics as being an issue. It wasn't just the way it was actually becoming problematic. And this is seen in the fact that in the Constitution it states 3 times the phrase without distinction of sex. So 3 times it states that we are individuals. It speaks about every person without distinction of sex. So it sees the differential treatment of people on the basis of whether they're male or female, and it says that's a problem. It speaks about the freedom of expression of religion, and that should not be an impediment to your enjoyment of society. So it sees that it can see people are being treated differently dependent on which church they pray in. So we've got 2 situations now. We've got people saying I'm important. We've got society saying differential treatment based on kind of characteristics is not okay. And then we move up to the 1937 Constitution, where it states unequivocally, it speaks about the dignity and the freedom of the individual. So now it's expressly stated in the Constitution of the country that the dignity and the freedom of the individual is of supreme importance. It's to promote the common good and secure the country. So roll on 10 years, we're post World War II and the world's in shock. And they thought the First World War was going to be the war to end all wars, and this time they really mean it, so they put together the United Nations. Now, the United Nations is largely made up of the Allies, it was a subsection of the countries of the world, but they put together the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. And in that, it is stated on a global scale, the equal inalienable rights of members of the human family. So this is the first time it is set out in a document signed up to by member states that they recognize that A, we're individuals, and B, that we have rights simply by dint of being human. So now it's it's expressly stated. We now have this kind of new concept of just because you're alive, you have rights. Whereas before there was, the idea that where you were born, when you were born, etc. was important. Now it's simply you are born. So, and they set out, there are 30 articles, they set out the rights. So I'm going to go into them in the next slide, or at least some of them. So, oh, sorry, no, back on. Thank you, sorry. So we have these concepts. In order to access these rights, we need laws. And various iterations of laws and institutions are put into place in order for people to be able to access these rights. Currently, the laws that apply most to us at the moment are the Employment Equality Acts, access to employment, reasonable accommodations. We have the Equal Status Acts, which set out the protected characteristics. And again, harking back to people recognizing that you are treated differently based on different things. Like I have green eyes, brown hair, pale skin. One of those will be treated more importantly by society than the other 2. There's also the Disability Act, which gives access to public services and buildings, and the Universities Act, which it requires that universities have equality policy. So that's an important act for us here as well. The public sector duty relates to the IREC Act. Now, I'll mention that more later. So the IREC Act is the Irish Human Rights and Equality Commission Act, and there's a specific article in that which is of supreme importance to the work I do anyway in the EDI unit. And just as an aside, the Sustainable Development Goals, another UN initiative, equality is mentioned specifically in 2 of those goals as being of importance to having a sustainable planet by 2030. It's Article 5, gender equality, and Article 10, or Goal 10, which is reducing inequalities in general. And there are other ones that could be, arguably, we could be feeding into. Thank you very much, Simon. So, the rights as set out in the Universal Declaration and in the Constitution expressly and inferred from articles in our Constitution are things like the right to life, right to liberty, education, employment, and so on and so forth. We have freedom of association. We have freedom. We have a right to leisure time and working hours set out in it. There are many rights. Some of them are universal. Some of them are specific to individual countries or are tailored to suit. So the United Nations have their Universal Declaration, and they've got a number of conventions and civic and political rights and economic and social rights and elimination of discrimination against various groups. And the countries sign up, and unfortunately there's a cherry picking that goes on. You don't take in the entire convention, you take in bits of it, and those conventions then are put into laws. So the obligations are positive and negative. Positive is where the government has to act, so they have to put schools in place, and negative is that they just don't put you into the back of a paddy wagon for no good reason. Discrimination is specifically around the protected characteristics. So the protected characteristics are set out in the Equal Status Act. And in this country, there are 9/10 of them. So it's only discrimination if you're treated less favorably on the grounds of one of these protected characteristics. If you're treated unfavorably for another reason, it's not discrimination, it's just unpleasant. So the grounds are age, disability, civil status, which is whether you're married or in a relationship, family is whether you have dependents, gender. And gender in this country, we only have 2. We don't recognize legally a 3rd gender yet. Membership of the traveller community is unique to Ireland, not because we're the only ones who are travellers, but because it took us a long time to recognise them as a minority ethnicity. Race, religion, sexual orientation, and HAP is the housing assistance payments. So landlords are not allowed to discriminate against you if you're treat you differently if you're in receipt of those payments. So in UCC anyway, we kind of refer to that as the socioeconomic ground. It's quite a narrow one, but that's how we refer to it. So you can have direct. Indirect is quite obviously, I'm not going to employ you because you're pregnant. Indirect is when something is, for example, put in place, a condition of work that will disproportionately affect somebody with a characteristic. Association is if you are, say, for example, a member of the settled community and you're not allowed to join the golf club because you're married to a member of the traveller community. An imputation would be that it's imputed that you have this characteristic, but you don't. So what we're trying to do in the EDI unit and EDI units around the place is that we're trying to level the playing field. So to go in and find the issues and unpick them and level the playing field so that people can have, as Simon was talking about, a full sense of belonging in university and feeling like it's their home. It's no good having rights if you can't access them. Thank you, Simon. So we have various reporting obligations then under the laws. The public sector duty is the kind of a prime one. So I mentioned the IREC Act earlier. So there's this public sector equality and human rights duty known as the public sector duty. And in it we have, it's called to assess, address and report. So it's a very active obligation on public bodies to really interrogate what they're doing, everything they're doing under these areas, as employers, as service providers, as service procurers, and to identify where there may be inequalities and what they can do about them. And we have to drill down into this and produce annual reports on it and have a strategic plan. so that is an overarching covering all the grounds, and then there are specific reporting requirements from the HEA. They ask us to report on our actions around gender equality, race equality, and ending sexual violence and harassment. And then we also have the Disability Authority look for disability reporting on disability in university. So they're quite onerous reporting requirements, and they often require action plans and assessment. So that all HEIs would be involved in this annually. Thank you, Simon. So lastly, and very briskly, because I suspect time is rattling on. So I want to just touch on positive actions, and because there can be sometimes people can feel a bit leery about positive actions and consider that they're positive discrimination. So positive discrimination is absolutely outlawed. It's no. But positive action is when we take specific measures to promote equality and inclusion, often for groups historically disadvantaged. So in Irish law, it's based on people who have one of the protected grounds. Now, there's actions in here that don't technically come under that. So, for example, the higher education access route or free fees and SUSI, for example, would be, I think commonly understood to be a positive action, but not technically legally positive action because it's not a protected ground. But they are definitely leveling the playing field. If you can't attend university because you can't afford the fees, that's nothing to do with whether you've got the merit. It's whether or not how big your pocketbook is. So that would be a positive action to allow people attend. The disability access route is a positive action that's been around since so long, it's kind of part of the wallpaper. We don't even notice it. Mature student is another positive action. Any of the action plans for gender equality or race equality, all of these are trying to level the playing field. So, for example, if you want everyone to cycle, cycle to school, do you just give them all bikes, or do you give them a bike they can ride? So give them all bikes is just action, but giving them a bike they can ride would be kind of a positive action. So somebody needs a tricycle, somebody needs a recliner. I think we probably all seen that photograph at this stage. There's a little cartoon of that. So SOAR for access is across a lot of institutions. University of Sanctuary is another one, and then staff which have like reasonable accommodations under the Employment Equality Acts. Things like universities are increasingly providing ISL interpretation at events as standard. The Senior Academic Leadership Initiative is another positive action. Statutory, and then you can also have local interpretations or applications or kind of national initiatives. So we have the various statutory leaves, for example, around family, like so we've got maternity, adoptive, and so forth. You can read those there. And then local, like I know in UCC, I'm unfamiliar with other universities in this, but I know we've recently brought in surrogacy leave and fertility treatment leave, which would, for example, be leaves that would directly, kind of disproportionately, positively impact the LGBT community. And again, the Gender Recognition Act is the statutory side, and then local, a lot of universities have a gender identity and expression policy to kind of help that area along. So that would be kind of on the ground actions that would be involved in the universities. So thank you very much, Simon, and let you move on.
Thank you. So thanks so much, Anne-Marie. We're just to kind of tee up the question, because we're about to get into the discussion part of this. Martha or Jane, am I correct in thinking we're finished at 2:30, are we? Would that be correct?
I
think so.
I'd say was it 2:15?
Okay,
Ronan?
20 past,
Yeah,
grand.
yeah.
Okay, that's grand. We still have loads of time. So
Yeah,
thank you, Martha. To tee up the question, Anne-Marie's kind of given us a really good overview of what's happening, like from a legal and statutory point of view. She's also made, in my opinion, a really interesting point. She's implied, or she's shown us that there is a big, strong, robust framework there, going with deep roots in constitutions and in declarations of human rights. She's also shown on the left here that there's a lot of positive stuff happening, at least in EDIs with EDI in higher education institutes in Ireland, as we can see here on the left. And this whole list shows you the stuff that is happening here in Ireland. So I'm going to tee up the question. The question, just to remind you before we kind of open it up, the question is, could EDI be as seriously threatened in Irish HEIs, Irish higher education institutes, as it is in higher education education institutes in the USA. To put it in more cruder terms, could the same thing happen in Ireland as is happening in the USA? We have a Mentimeter, and we're going to have two parts to the Mentimeter. You can join the Mentimeter by scanning that QR code on your screen, or by going to menti.com on a phone or on a laptop and using the code 75708967 to join it. So go to menti.com and use that code 75708967 to join. And you're going to see two questions. First question you're going to see is just a basic, brutal overview, multiple choice. Is it definitely? Is EDI definitely going to be as seriously threatened here? Is it likely to be threatened? Is it probably not going to be threatened? Or is it definitely not going to be threatened? We're going to use this as a jumping off point for our conversation. After this, you'll have some chances to give some feedback. But let's just see if I can switch over. Let's just see the answers we've got so far. These are all anonymous. Okay. So, some optimists in the crowd. I like this. I'm going to give it a little while. We've got 14 votes so far. I want to see if any more come in, but take your time. Just while we're waiting, we're going to see some open text boxes in a moment. You can give input there, or you can give input on the chat here. Martha and Shane are going to be keeping an eye on it and feeding back to us. So multiple methods of communication with us. And just maybe consider, if you want, if you're looking for something to talk about, consider the assumptions that we've been making, that EDI is just about being sound, that EDI in Ireland is actually under threat, that EDI in America is under threat. And think about the things that Anne-Marie said, the legal, the regulatory framework. Does that come into your thoughts on this question? Okay, so we can see the results on the screen here are that lots of optimists here. I'm still curious to hear from the pessimists, of which I am one, in the yes, definitely, or it's likely category. In this situation, I would probably add my vote to the probably not, though. But I'm really curious to hear everyone's opinion. So I'm going to ask you.
I'm wondering, Simon, sorry, was showing it maybe skewing the vote if people were kind of saying, well, if other people think, maybe I'll vote that way.
Maybe we'll find out. You should be able to see on your Mentimeter now, you should be able to see, although I'm going to check it myself, an open text box. So you can tell us more about your answer. Just let me see if you can actually see that. And if not, I will fix it. But if you can see an open, yes, you can tell us more about your answer either here on Mentimeter or on the chat in Zoom. Maybe type in some answers. They are anonymous on Mentimeter, not so much on Zoom. But sure, we're all friends here, I hope. We have our first answer over here. Thank you. If it can happen somewhere else, it can happen here. I like the sweeping statement of that. I'd like to dig into a little more of that. We also have an earlier note here from on the Zoom chat, which I found very interesting. I always felt EDI, someone said, should stand for equity and not equality. I absolutely agree, to give you the short answer. There is a little picture above that of equity versus equality, which I've always loved as an explainer of the difference between them. Martha, what do you feel about that?
I should throw in that there's kind of various schools of thought. When we talk equality, we're talking substantive equality, which is equity. So yes, we're back to the bikes again, but yeah, there's two schools of thought of whether it should be equity or equality, but it's substantive. You can always assume we're talking substantive equality, and that's what we mean.
Okay. Thanks for that question. It's a really good question. We've got some more comments coming in here. Actually, sorry, I do have this is kind of aimed at you, Anne-Marie. We've got a comment on the Zoom chat from Lenny. Saying it would be interesting to know more about the legal framework for EDI in the US and how it compares. Now, I'm not an expert on that. I don't know if you are, Anne-Marie.
Neither am I, but yes, it would.
Let's see if anyone knows anything about that.
It would be quite a complex one, I suspect, the difference between states and the federal side of it and how they interact.
I've got some very wide breadth of comments here on Mentimeter, if anyone's keeping an eye on it. Some of them are Well, they're going from the hedging to the fairly sweeping statements. But these are really, really good. What has happened in the US should mean even greater safeguards in Ireland now. I agree. But does that mean we will get them? Does that mean, I think, do we have a more robust EDI over here? America does not have a fundamentally sound society in the way that Ireland does. Personally, I think you're right, but I also think that we Irish people we are more sound, I think, personally, but I think we also have less. We let things slip through the cracks. We have lots of blind spots, I think. That's just my opinion, though. I'm going to ask people to look at these phrases, and actually, because we only have a couple of minutes left, I'm opening the floor up. I think anyone can stick on their mic and put up their hand. I think you'll be able to see the answers on the Mentimeter. I'm going to keep the Mentimeter thing sharing for a couple of minutes, but has anyone got any thoughts they'd like to express now, or does anybody have any insights that we have not talked about?
Simon, somebody's just asking there if you could show page 2 of the Mentimeter.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Please.
Yes. There we go.
So if people want to join in, are they able to join in and actually turn their cameras on and mics on?
Yeah,
or
they can, yeah, sure. I think I'm pretty sure that you can. If you can't, let us know.
They should be able to.
Yeah.
Simon, it's Patrick. Can I jump in very briefly?
Absolutely, Patrick. Thanks for being the bravest soul among us.
Yep, absolutely. So I voted definitely not. Certainly look, long term, within any country, anything is possible.
Yeah.
So within the near to medium term, I do not believe our EDI is under threat remotely in the terms that we see in the US. I just returned from there, as you know, a couple of years ago after spending 3 decades there.
Mm-hmm.
It's truly a very different country entity from a political, cultural, historical perspective.
Okay.
We are far more, in terms of kind of a social liberal democracy, Ireland is in a different plane altogether. So it's not to say we couldn't get there at some point in time, but I do not feel or see or foresee any existential threat to EDI initiatives in Ireland.
And you think that, based on what you're saying, you think that's because of our socio-political history?
That, and I think, honestly, even being, it's a little abstract or esoteric, I think it is part of the DNA of Irish people to champion the underdog.
I think so too.
We have just an innate sense of fairness. So I think that's almost a protective covering over all the other things I already referenced.
That's
Okay.
really encouraging to hear, Patrick. I would say one of the, I mean, yes, I the people, the innate sense of fairness. I would say that might also be a weakness in that we believe ourselves to be this and we don't see it, the danger coming. So these pockets of right-wing activity are growing and we're, yes, it's over there, or it's just that small group. And before you know it, there's this intolerance. So I think that we still have to be watchful for that. And the other threat is not so much within the people ourselves, but that we are a small nation. We're dependent on a lot of different things, like that globally, and the global pressures could cause, political reactions or responses that would be detrimental to what we're trying to do. So anyway, sorry to throw some cold water on that.
That's all right.
Yeah.
That's
If
okay.
I could just, Anne-Marie, I think you're 100% correct, and I think Simon, I sense shares your sensibilities. It is the right position is to be vigilant and in a ready to kind of advocate and defend against it. So 100% you're right, but separating that from what I actually think will happen. But there's always a chance of a Trump demagogue appearing in Ireland and whipping up kind of resentment. Absolutely.
Oh, yes.
Okay.
We were
Okay.
having conversations locally about even when shortly after Trump came in, with the reaction of whether we changed the name of our unit. I know other places have changed, like to community and connection and things like that. And we decided against it because we thought we're not going to bow to the pressure. But yeah, so there are all these conversations happening of people ducking and weaving and wondering what's the best way to go about it. So
guys, thank you so much for the chats. I'm gonna squeeze in one last thing just for everyone, and thanks everyone for the input here has been really good. And we're going to keep it, it's going to be shareable as well, so you can come back to it. Anne-Marie and I love talking about this stuff, and so if you feel brave or you feel curious, please do drop one of us a line. I noticed we haven't put our email addresses here, but you can Google our names, you'll come up with our email addresses easily. But let's keep the conversation going. We just want to show you quickly, go back to the presentation.
Into the presentation.
Yeah, one thing that we have done, the group that our group of Anne-Marie and Martha and me and several others, really dedicated people around the country, have put together a little bit of, we've been together for about a year and a half, and we've been working on one project, which was a kind of an overview of training. So this is the stuff that is happening, HEI, EDI training in different higher education institutes around the country. These on the left are the institutes that we've surveyed. You can see about 9 institutions there. And what we've found out of interest, it's small, but it is interesting, that in all but one of the institutions, race equality in higher education is commonly available to everyone, as is EDI in higher education, the general kind of training program there, and unconscious implicit bias. So we're really encouraged to know that most people can avail of this. Now, whether they do avail of it, whether they must avail of it, these are different questions. We found other kinds of training in the EDIs, the HEIs, excuse me, which you can see there on the board, ranging from women in leadership to bystander intervention. So it's a bit of a smorgasbord there, which gives us some problems and some opportunities. I'm going to quickly share with you what we found. EDI training is bitty. Everyone has different access. There's no kind of nationwide EDI program to which we could all sign up to. This does give an opportunity, at least in the HEI kind of sphere, for maybe Student Affairs Ireland to offer some kind of passport, like an EDI passport, where, like a digital badge, where there's some kind of standardization of the training. Another problem is the data, again, is bitty, it's siloed, and so it kind of makes our research, any research about HEIs, about EDI in HEIs in Ireland, a little more difficult. So we are asking for greater collaboration. And in that note, the very last thing we'll say, on that note of collaboration, feel free to join us. If you scan that QR code, you will be led to a registration form, and I'll be seeing that registration form, and this will be an opportunity to join us and to figure out with us where our work will go next. How can we promote EDI collaboration? How can we get more members and just basically promote more belonging? You can help us with that conversation if you scan on that code and maybe join us. We will be seeing, some of us will be seeing each other at the Collaborate Conference. I'm going to stop sharing. I'm going to stop. Thank you so much for listening, and thanks so much for coming. And Anne-Marie, thank you as well.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks everybody. That was a fabulous session, Anne-Marie and Simon. Really enjoyed it, as I'm sure everybody else did here. We could stay a lot longer, I think, and discuss a whole load of other things. And look, hopefully we might have an opportunity to do that down the line. So thanks again, Anne-Marie and Simon, and thanks Ronan as well, as always, for all your help with the IT side of things and for making such a seamless session. And thanks as well to Shane, who I know is going off the call now, for all his help as well. And thanks to all of you as well for your contribution and for attending the session, and hope to see you all again very soon as well. So thank you.
Thanks, guys. Thanks for everyone. Great to see you.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye.